Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, yes. Okay. So, hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome you all for the second section of Rainbows of Emotion. The topic which we have today is especially it's mental immunity. So, I welcome you all for this wonderful section. So, before we move ahead for the section, I would like to give a small introduction of the speaker, Keerthana Swaminathan. A small introduction about her before we move on to the section. Keerthana Swaminathan is a sports and exercise psychologist and founder of Think, Train and Perform. She works with state and national level athletes for mental conditioning, and she also works with school children on behavior modification through physical activity and sports. Apart from that, Keerthana Swaminathan also works with many organizations in terms of performance psychology, and she is also the author of the book. When I look back, it was 21 already. So she is also a marathon runner and a cyclist. So we are very happy to have you, Keerthana Swaminathan, and let's begin the section.
Thanks a lot for having me here. I'll just share the screen. Just give me a minute.
Yep.
I hope all of you can see my screen. Yeah, I think right now, I think all of you should be able to see the screen. Yes, so today's topic is mental immunity, right? I know most of you would have heard of this word called immunity, especially given the situation of COVID-19. I'm sure initially when the entire COVID-19 situation started, all of you wanted to boost your immunity so that we don't actually contract the disease, right? So immunity, all of us know in terms of diseases, in terms of our physical health, right? But how many of us actually know about mental immunity? Especially during such a time of a pandemic, all of us need to be very, very aware of our emotional and mental immunity. That's, in fact, the most important. Because if let me first explain what mental immunity is. Then I'll make you aware of why this is so important, right? So exactly like physical immunity, mental immunity is all about making yourself strong. By strong, I don't mean you shouldn't get affected by a negative situation or a negative incident. By strong, I mean you need to be aware of a certain thing. So when I say strong, don't get me wrong that you shouldn't be emoting in a certain way. It just means we are prepared to handle it a lot better. That's what mental immunity means over here, right? So again, if you look at physical immunity, so that we don't get confused with both, right? Physical immunity is nothing but, see, you might have the virus within you, but it just may not show out because your body is already able to deal with it. Not that you are not getting the virus, it's just that you're not showing the symptoms in a way that other people do, right? Similarly, mental immunity is when it doesn't mean you don't get affected by negative situations. It just means you're prepared to handle it a lot better than other people, or when you don't have mental immunity. That's it. That's what it means. And mental immunity also includes the element of resilience, which means coming back from a low, right? So again, let's say one of us have a cold or a fever and we're out for, let's say, 7-8 days. The person who gets back from the fever as soon as possible is the person who has more resilience in terms of health, right? Similarly, when if a person is going through a psychological crisis, something maybe due to personal, or maybe due to the career or something like that, the most important thing here is, are we getting back or are we getting out of the situation psychologically affected very quickly? That's what is mental immunity. So what is mental immunity? Let me just read this out to you. Mental immunity is what happens when we condition or train our minds to not only expect fearful thoughts or external challenges, but also to tolerate them when they arise. It is shifting one's objective in life from avoiding pain to building meaning, right? So let me just make you understand this a little more. So, it, see, it's about training our mind to, like I said earlier, to be aware or to understand that yes, all these thoughts exist. And if this particular situation arises, I am prone to get this particular thought or I'm prone to get challenged, right? Uh, and this is the way I'm going to manage it. That's what is mental immunity. So, knowing a way to manage it is mental immunity. And like this particular definition of mental immunity says, it's about shifting your purpose from, we're not going to look at avoiding pain or avoiding a particular crisis. We're going to look at building meaning from that particular crisis. Is that particular challenging situation going to change our life completely for the good, right? I'll give you an example. So when I was, let's say, in college, right? I remember one of my professors telling me. So I went and told my professor, "See, I'm going to do my sports psychology degree." So my professor happened to tell me, when you come back to India, don't come back crying to me that you don't have a job. See, even I was aware that sports psychology is a relatively new field, and at that point, especially that I was selected or chosen for that particular university, after convincing my parents, for actually taking that particular subject, that particular course, because it's very niche. Not many people actually take that course. So after all that, actually getting that from a professor was very tough for me. But then I ended up changing that a lot. It actually started giving me more meaning in terms of, okay, let me see how this actually works for me, right? The way I started looking at that statement was more in terms of, okay, how can I use this particular statement to make me a lot more prepared for that challenge when it actually comes, right? So that preparedness, that learned preparedness, wherein you start getting prepared for such challenges and you don't get bogged down by such statements, because that statement was a very meaningful statement, right? If that statement wasn't really made, then maybe I'm not going to be in a position where I am right now, correct? So building actual meaning from that statement instead of actually taking it very personally and saying, okay, that's it, I'm not going to be asking her for this. That's not the way we take it, right? We're not going to be avoiding pain here. We're going to be trying to find meaning. We're going to be trying to look at a purpose over here. That's what we're going to look at. Okay. So this is mental immunity. We're going to look at resilience. We're going to look at building meaning. We're going to look at how challenges turn into something called opportunities. That's what mental immunity is all about. And why is mental immunity very, very important for us, all of us? Why is it so important? Because all of us deal with people on a day-to-day basis, right? There's a lot of transference that takes place. Of course, I will be talking about transference at a later session, but there's going to be a lot of transference that is going to be taking place. And if we are going to be having those fearful thoughts, and if we are going to be so sensitive to what other people say or other negative situations that are going to happen, because see, negative situations, challenges, these fearful thoughts are going to happen every single day, right? And if we're going to let them bog us down, then imagine all of us being down or low every single day, which means we're not going to have too much immunity and we're not going to be resilient from these challenges, right? So it's very, very important to have this mental immunity. And see, even if another person doesn't have such immunity, you're going to be spreading that kind of happiness and emotion towards them, right? So it's extremely important to build this kind of immunity. Again, exactly like the way you do for your health, right? We're going to be building this strength. It doesn't happen overnight. We're going to be building this. We're going to first understand what gets our immunity low, what compromises our immunity, after which we're going to see how we can build this immunity up. Both are very, very important topics. So I'm going to just move on to what makes my mental immunity compromised, right? So if you do have a paper and a pen, please do write down what all makes you feel negative, what all makes you feel, a sort of fatigued feeling, a sort of a feeling of draining, getting drained. Yeah. So if you could just take a sheet of paper and write down what are the small things that makes you feel drained. It could be what other people say. It could be you thinking and thinking about something. For example, I'll give you my example. If I were to watch a movie that has a lot of violence, I get I feel a lot drained and unproductive. So I stopped seeing such movies, right? So that makes me feel drained. So what makes my mental immunity compromised? One of the factors is watching movies which have, let's say, a lot of violence, right? So that would be my first point on a sheet of paper. So similarly, if you could write what makes you feel drained, it could be people, it could be spending time with a particular person, it could be movies, it could be any trigger, it could be any trigger at all, right? So please do write it down. I'll just give you, let's say, a minute or two. I think one of the questions I get very frequently when I ask this question, what makes my mental immunity compromised, is how do I know that my mental immunity is compromised, right? So if you got to know what makes your mental immunity compromised, the first, I let me just narrate you the symptoms, or how you would feel internally when you don't have much mental immunity. You're going to be feeling drained all the time. You're going to be feeling weak all the time. I'm talking about physical weakness. So you're going to be feeling weak or drained all the time when you do something. And then when you do something which compromises your mental immunity, you might be feeling unproductive. You're not going to be feeling that freshness that you would feel when probably do something that you like, right? So those are the things that makes you know that your mental immunity is compromised. So whatever happens, you're very irritable, and if this happens in a continuous process, continuous period of time, then you know your mental immunity is compromised. So you can make note of such things that make you feel so. So let's say if it's your job, then what about your job makes you feel like you feel drained? So I think you can write that also down. Okay. So I'm going to be explaining a few of these things that makes you feel drained. Then if you can relate to what you've written, or if you find additional pointers that you can write, I think that will do. That will be fine. Okay. Now, external locus of identity, right? So I know this looks a little complicated, but let me simplify this a lot more to you. A lot of us base our identity. What is identity? Is who am I? The answer to the question, who am I? Right? So most of us who have a compromised mental immunity have an external locus of identity, which means When when you ask the question, who am I, to yourself, you're going to be looking more in terms of how other people look at you, right? Which means you base your identity on what other people think of you. Okay, so if other people think you are kind, then you identify yourself as a kind person. If other people think you're a people person, then you identify yourself as a people person. If other people think you are arrogant, you identify yourself as arrogant, right? So this is external locus of identity, and I know a lot of us have this issue. Hmm? And see, it may not be 100% external locus of identity, wherein you answer this question with what other people think of you. It might be, let's say, 70-30, 70% external, 30% only is how much you know of yourself, right? So you need to change that. Okay, so you need to change that to more of an internal locus of identity. So most of us have this damaged immune system in terms of mental immunity, because we base our identity on what other people think of us, which is nothing but how we look at social media. I won't say social media is the issue, but basing your identity on how other people comment or how many likes you get, that becomes external locus of identity, right? So it's very important for you to, I'm not saying social media is wrong, but using social media as an external locus of identity, right? Which means not only social media is there, but also the other things that you do in order to please other people, or in order to let's say gain other people's the kind of identity that you can gain from them becomes an issue over there, which means that compromises your immune system. Why do I say so? Because when that ceases, or when that stops, when other people stop looking at you that way, right? Which means, let's say someone says you're a kind person, and they change it. They, at some point something happens, and they don't feel that way, or they don't express that you are kind. Then you end up feeling bad. You end up feeling, who am I? You get that identity crisis of sorts, right? I'm just giving you a very simple example, but I know this happens a lot more in depth, right? So if you could write down, things that, the identity that you have, or the who am I path that you have, which is based on what other people think of you, please write it down. Please do write it down. Please do make note of it, so that tomorrow you can try rectifying it and see whether it is really your identity, right? So the second one is lacking a sense of purpose, right? So the moment you have something to do, the moment you feel like you have a purpose, or you have a goal to achieve, right? uh, you will never get bogged down by other things, even if there is an obstacle. The moment you're looking forward to something, I'm sure all of you would have gone through this when probably you're looking to go for a vacation that you're really looking forward to, right? I'm sure after this COVID-19, all of us are wanting to go for a vacation, because all of us are just sitting inside the houses, right? So the one thing that we're really going to look forward to, just imagine all of you are wanting to go for a vacation. You planned for a trip, and whatever might be the obstacle, you end up having so much of determination to actually go about it, right? So which is nothing but because of a clear sense of purpose. The purpose is nothing but going for a vacation, right? So simply put, there should be something that you look forward to every day, and if you don't have something like that, then I'm sure there is going to be a compromised immunity, because you're not going to be showing that kind of determination and grit, right? So determination, or let's say doing what you have to do, is not going to be there, which is lack of mental immunity. right? So if you do feel that you have a lack of a sense of purpose, please put it down in your paper, and I'll tell you how to get into that feeling of purpose. So we'll get into that. So next point is lack of awareness of emotions and your self-limiting beliefs. Like I told you earlier, emotions are not wrong. Your self-limiting beliefs are not wrong at all. All of us do have our own limitations, but are we aware of it? The moment we lack that awareness, people can catch us anywhere, right? But the moment we know this is our limiting belief, we can literally push ourselves and go beyond our expectations, right? So when we lack that awareness of how we feel in terms of emotions or even in terms of your beliefs, that's a sure sign of compromised mental immunity. So it's very important for you to start becoming aware. Again, like I said, I'm just going to give you a few pointers as to how to build your mental immunity after this. So that's when we're going to be looking at those particular things. So again, self-limiting beliefs, I've explained it in the last workshop. Those are beliefs that make you feel that you cannot do a certain thing. All the I can't do this, I'm not good at math, I'm not creative enough, I can't be like her, I can't be like him. Whatever those beliefs are, I think those are self-limiting beliefs. You can, for those who weren't there last time, those are self-limiting beliefs. Okay. So those are the three things that make our mental immunity very compromised. So the moment you know what is your key factor, it's very easy to work on it. Nevertheless, I'm going to give you a few pointers for you to start changing or start strengthening your mental immunity. So let's start working on those, and I'm sure you'll understand, from that, what are your reasons for a compromised mental immunity. So how can I boost my mental immunity? Right. The first one, which is the most important point, right? Focus on progress, not perfection. You always only strive for perfection, not going to be seeking perfection all the time. Just look at progress. That's most important. What do most of us do? We all want perfection. We all want everything to be perfect to our 100%, which is not wrong, which is definitely not wrong. That is some expectation that you need to have. But your focus should also be on that 5% progress, 10% progress. Because if you're always going to focus on the perfection, you're always going to be dissatisfied. You're always going to feel, I can't do this, I can't do that, right? That's only going to feed your self-limiting beliefs. You need to look at perfection over there, but always keep looking at progress every now and then, because that's very, very important. Both are important, but progress is a lot more important. Constantly keep monitoring your progress. Do not forget that. So your main focus will be on your, if you obviously, we all have cameras with we have dual cameras, right? So when we focus on one object, the other one is not completely hidden, but it's just out of focus, but it's there. Correct. The one which is out of focus is going to be perfection. It's there, we're going to be having that, but we're going to be focusing on our progress. So slowly, as we keep focusing on progress, we get our perfection. If we focus the other way around, what happens is, if we focus on progress, if we focus on perfection and not progress, what happens is that we end up increasing our self-limiting beliefs. We end up feeling a lot dissatisfied, which means we're going to be increasing our negative emotions as well, right? On the other hand, if you have perfection in the background and progress as your main focus, then what happens is that, yes, you're always striving towards improvement, and you're also progressing in that way, and there's some kind of motivation that you have. You're still going to be determined. to go and achieve it. So that's how you work on progress versus perfection. So if any of you have this issue of focusing on perfection all the time, and if you feel stagnant, right, please make a note of it so that you start working on your progress. Even a 2% progress is progress. That's very, very important, right? So make sure you make a note of it and start focusing on your progress from now on, with the perfection part on the background. Next comes identity. Identify where you get your identity from. That's very important. Are you getting your identity from what you do, or are you getting the identity from what other people say you are? Right? It's a very, very important question to be asked. I know all of us are adults, and I know most children have this issue. But I think in today's world, because of the kind of exposure that all of us have, right? Most of us are baggaged, and that burden of other people throwing things inside our identity bag is there, right? So I think we need to work on this a little bit. So the main thing is, um, one exercise I would recommend definitely is, if you can write down the adjectives, right, that you would describe yourself with. You can even do it now. I'll give you 2 minutes. Just write down the adjectives that you would describe yourself, with. Who am I? For the question, who am I? Just write down all the adjectives that feel match your identity. Let me just give you 2 minutes for that. So write down a list of adjectives for the question, who am I? Adjectives that describe you, both positive and negative. Don't restrict to only positive, only negative. It can be both. Okay. Once you've written those adjectives down, I want you to write down where you got that adjective from. Is it something that you did that made you feel that way? Both positive and negative, okay? Or is it that something someone else has been constantly telling you that made you feel that way? I want you to identify that part, and then you'll know whether, you'll have to verify whether that is true or not. What another person thinks of you, is it really true or not? For example, let's say, um, you feel you're a person who is not creative, who is very, who is not creative, okay? And you you kind of feel that it's come from somewhere else, okay? I want you to just immediately check whether it's real or not. Is it true? Is it true or not? Okay. Creativity doesn't mean only painting, coloring, drawing, and those things. It means also giving different answers. So doing things differently is creativity, right? So I want you to immediately think of whether you've done things a little differently or a little creatively. So then you'll get an answer of whether you're creative or not, right? So I want you to do that for every adjective that you have written for yourself, every word that you've written for yourself. That's very important. So another 2 minutes for that. So we move to the next step, which is acceptance of reality. Okay. Now, this is the most important bit, right? So, most of us live in a sort of denial that a certain thing is happening. Let's say there's a negative situation, right? Immediately accept that, hey, okay, this is happening. When we are in denial, we kind of resist. There's a kind of resistance over there. So it makes things very tough for you to move on. The moment you accept, right, it's a lot easier for you to approach that particular situation. So acceptance of reality is very important. So for example, during the entire COVID-19 phase, when the very stringent lockdown was there, right, uh, a lot of these companies came up with a issue of not being able to sort of move on due to the lockdown, right? So the whole thing here is the companies that actually accepted that this is reality and this is something that all of us, the question of, okay, why did this happen now, all that makes you get into the denial stage. So the moment you accept, okay, this is happening now, we are getting into a lockdown now, we are getting into this situation now, it's very easy to get into ideas. It's very easy for you to get into newer ideas to look forward to something, right? So it's very important for us to accept that reality. The moment you accept that this is happening, this is what it is, it's very easy for us to move on. It's a lot easier for us to move on than in denial, right? And the moment you accept this reality that this is the truth and this is how it is going to be, at least for now, we get into very creative thinking of coming up with a lot of solutions. We are not stuck or trapped in the thing of, okay, this is not happening, right? So that acceptance of reality should always be there. And the moment you go through a tough situation, a negative is only in our mind, right? The moment you go through a situation that makes you feel that you're in a denial, okay, this is not happening my way, first get into acceptance of that situation and then slowly see how you can turn things to what you probably wanted, right? That's acceptance of reality. um yes, accept and acknowledge upsetting thoughts as a bridge, okay, not as a barricade. There will be a lot of upsetting thoughts. All of us get upsetting thoughts. These thoughts could be what if thoughts. Remember last time I was teaching you about what if thoughts. What if this happens, what if that happens, exaggerating normalcy. All those can be upsetting thoughts that all of us go through on a day to day basis, right? Accept it. Accept it. The moment you know, okay, this is the thought that's happening, this is the thought that's going around in my mind, right? Start acknowledging it and working towards it in a very subtle manner. You don't have to deny that this is not happening, right? First accept it. Let's say you have this thought of you feel things are not going your way, and like for example, I think 2 days ago I had a webinar and this thought was constantly upsetting me. This webinar is not going to go through, webinar is not going to go through it. I had that thought constantly, surprisingly, because I've never had these thoughts at all, especially for a webinar, right? And what happened was that at the end of the day, when the webinar actually started, there was no network connectivity. So we had to shift it, right? Had I asked the organizers to check or something like that, then maybe wherein I could have acknowledged that thought, maybe it, I could have postponed the entire webinar by a day earlier, right? But since I didn't really, acknowledge that thought, what happened was it ended up that at the end I had to postpone it, right? So that's the whole thing. You need to acknowledge, okay, these thoughts might be telling me something, right? Acknowledge and work on it immediately. That's very, very important. That working on it aspect is very important. Don't just let that be. Just work on it in a very subtle manner. It could be something that you need to do, something very small that you need to do. That's it. Okay. Yes. Um, very important point. Keep your mind open to see a change. If you're going to be closed saying, I don't see a change at all, whether it's with a person or with, let's say, a thing, it's very important for you to be open to see a change. Like I said, progress. Progress makes all the difference, right? So keep your mind open to see that change. Even if it's a 1%, keep your mind open to see that change. And another thing which is important is not just with other people, even with you, keep your mind open to see that change. Admit it that you're changing, even if it's for the good, right? Most of us don't admit that we have changed or we can do a certain thing. So please keep your mind open to see those small changes. If you have children at home, employees, or anyone, for that, your friends, if you see a small change, start appreciating them so that your mind gets opened up. That's again a very important point. A, their self-esteem gets boosted. They see a change there. Secondly, you end up having your mind a lot open. You end up starting to accept that small change. That will be more of a practice for you. Start appreciating that, even that small progress, right? So you need to keep your mind open to see change. Change is not going to happen overnight. It's going to be progress by progress, and there is a change every single day. It's something which is constant, right? So keep your mind open to see that change. If you can't keep your mind open, you won't be able to see the change, although it is happening. Be fully aware of your emotional changes. Now, what do I mean by emotional changes, right? How you feel to a certain um, thing, right? So let's say you read a newspaper article, just look at the way your emotions change, okay? Maybe you wake up in the morning, you have your coffee. Just notice how your emotions are changing, how your feelings are changing, right? Do you get very happy after the cup of coffee, or what makes you get really happy, right? Notice how you feel after reading that newspaper. Does it make you feel drained? Does it make you feel sad? Or does it make you feel refreshed? Right? Notice how you feel after you talk to a person. Just notice all these small emotional changes so that you're aware that these things are affecting you, either in a positive way or a negative way, but these things are affecting you. So just be fully aware of these emotional changes. That's very important. That makes you take charge of your emotions. See, even if you read a newspaper article and let's say you get sad, right? Or you get angry about a certain thing that's happening socially, right? You're at least aware that that has caused this anger or sadness or whatever. You're not going to be showing it to another person. And even if you show it to another person, you understand you're not angry with the other person. You're just angry about something that you read, correct? It's just a response. So start being aware of these emotional changes. It's very important. Nothing. So on a daily basis, when you do something, when you read something, when you're talking to someone, when you do something, just start noting down what are the changes you're going through in your feelings. Are you feeling sad, happy, excited? What is it that you're feeling? Okay, so that gives you awareness towards your emotional changes. Either way, I'm going to be talking to you about mindfulness in terms of emotions in one of the workshops. So there we'll be going into details of this, right? Okay, here we are, having a strong sense of purpose. Now, this makes you extremely robust and resilient, having this strong sense of purpose. Now, this strong sense of purpose is nothing but uh, something that you have to do, something that makes you feel super excited every single day, something that makes you want to jump out of the bed and actually start working or doing whatever it is, right? If you are excited when you jump out of the bed, it means that you have a strong sense of purpose, right? Wherein you know, like for example, my strong sense of purpose is when I tend to empower people. The smile I see on people's face when they feel a change that I've triggered, that's my strong sense of purpose. That really makes me feel extremely happy and excited, and that's something that makes me want to wake up and get to work as soon as possible, right? So having that strong sense of purpose, that calling, is very very important. How do you get to know your strong sense of purpose? The previous point I spoke about, awareness of your emotion, that makes you understand your strong sense of purpose. Nevertheless, what you can do is that you can start working on the small goals that you have, right? So for every day, maybe the previous night, just note down what exactly are you looking forward to the next day, right? And start writing that down, and that could start giving you a strong sense of purpose. Now, culminated maybe at, let's say, after a month or 3 months or something like that, if you're constantly aware of the emotions and what you're doing, then I'm sure you might start understanding what your purpose is. So you can start working on it that way. So, what happens when you have a strong sense of purpose is that even when you have an obstacle, you're going to be coming back. You're going to be looking at the obstacle as an opportunity to get closer to your strong sense of purpose. Okay, so that's very important. And last but not the least, having an extremely strong support system. Now, the support system need not be your group of friends who you hang out with, not at all. It need not be, a group of friends. It could just be a person you can talk to, you can share. Or it could also be that you have yourself as a strong support system wherein you're writing things down, you're journaling. If any of you do have the habit of writing your feelings down every single morning or in the night or what you did, that could be a strong support system. Just that you need to have an outlet. You need to pour everything out. That could be people, that could be a person, that could be you doing something, for example writing a journal or singing it out loud or drawing. Right now I think mandala has become a craze, so mandala, anything. So that could be a strong support system. And there's nothing wrong to actually have that strong support system. In fact, that is the most important. That's the most important. That's extremely important, right? So with this, our pointers, are pretty much done to get a robust mental immunity. So one by one, when you start working on those, you're going to be feeling a lot better mentally, and you're going to also have a robust immune system in terms of mental or emotional, right? So what you can do is start working on these one by one. And as and when I talk, the next workshop, we're going to be talking about a lot of emotional regulations and all those things, right? So as and when that happens, you will understand how that correlates to mental immunity, right? So any questions, please feel free to ask me.
Keerthana, you can stop sharing this
Yeah,
screen. So
yeah.
the participants, you can unmute yourself and you can ask your questions.
Any questions on the section can be asked.
Sugumaran, Sudarshan, Santaram, Ratan, Nayagam sir. Okay, probably I will initiate one question from my side. See,
Sure.
it is with respect to the identity and identify
Yes.
that whom we are.
Yeah.
Basically, as a person or any individual, we will also always love to listen from the other person. Say,
Correct.
for example, if I'm saying that Keerthana, I saw you in that way, you have these potential skills.
Mm-hmm.
So automatically, our thought process will be accepting the other person who is commenting on us
Correct.
rather than realizing what we are.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is this a push from the external force that I'm assuming that this is the way that I am?
Mm-hmm.
If it is so, how I need to correct myself to realize whom am I?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I actually expected this question because our identity is a lot. It comes from external a lot, especially when in the childhood, right? But the problem with an external source of identity is that when that stops, when the entire thing of uh, the constant feedback from external source stops, we end up having this identity crisis. So that's the only issue with an external identity. That being said, most of our identity crops up from the external source, right? So initially, let it be external, there's nothing wrong with it. But on a everyday basis, if you're going to be feeding the external identity a lot more than the internal, then that's going to be an issue. So we need to resort to a balance. It is going to start getting fed through an external source. Yes, that's the truth. The source is going to be external, but for us to verify whether that is true of us, I think that's very important. That's how we start acknowledging that balance, start realizing who we are and who we are not, right? So external source, yes, but checking whether or verifying whether that identity or that who am I is the answer to who you actually are is very important.
And I have another question added to
Yes,
the same area. See,
yes,
whenever any individual praise another individual with
yeah,
some good points, we forget the verifying factor and
correct,
start accepting whatever the person say.
yes,
If the same person is giving a negative feedback, we usually react immediately, stating that even if we are in a negative state, we will
yes,
be able to react immediately, saying that no, I'm not like that. So,
yes.
so how this stage has to be met and how this stage has to be crossed.
So, be it positive or negative, it's very important for us to start verifying, right? So, actually, you don't need to verify everyone's feedback. The moment you know that particular person's feedback is affecting you in a positive or negative way, start verifying it, because not everyone's feedback is going to verify it. Like, for example, all of us get, likes, comments, whatever it is on Facebook and Instagram, wherever it is, right? And most of us feel, yeah, we do feel happy that when we get a certain comment, but that doesn't that is not the main criteria for our identity, right? So that's very important for us to understand. Okay, so this, if we can acknowledge that part of it and start working and trying to create that balance, that I think would work.
Okay, thank you, Kirtana.
Yeah, I think
I
that's when we need to start verifying whether we have an external or an internal source. That verification can happen at that point.
We have a question from one of
Yeah,
the
sure.
participants called Ramakrishna.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to see it?
One second. Huh?
Or else you're able to read it out, not a problem.
Yeah, can you just read it out?
Yeah, what is the difference between taking feedback and getting feedback? And how do we balance emotional positivity on this?
What is the difference between taking and getting feedback, and how do we balance emotional positivity on this? Right. Okay. So, feedback, right? We just have to understand that it's a feedback. Okay, first thing. So when a person gives you a feedback, understand that they have a story, they also have a background, and they're giving their perspective. They're telling you what they're seeing from their perspective, right? So let's imagine you're wearing a spectacles, like I told last time, and this person is talking from his or her background. That's it, right? So when you're taking a feedback, always understand that that person is talking from their side. It may or may not be applicable to you. Okay, so you don't need to take all the feedback, but what is important is that you take certain feedback. You need to evaluate whether this feedback is okay or not for you to take. Again, how would you evaluate is check whether it matches you, it suits your needs. If you feel like there are filters you apply, right? Similarly, you apply your filters over here. check if it really has to be applied here. Check if that feedback is really helpful for you or not, and then start applying that feedback over there. How do we balance emotional positivity on the same? Similarly, when you start acknowledging that, you're going to be a lot more positive than anything, because you're not going to be negative. Obviously, if a person is going to give you feedback and you understand it is helping you, you're going to feel happy about it, right? So there won't be a negativity there at all. I hope that answered your question. I think there's another question. Is that a problem? Is there a problem of being a perfectionist or want to be alone? Okay, let me tell you something. If you're comfortable being alone, there's nothing wrong. Even I really enjoy being alone. There's nothing wrong about it. But the moment it starts affecting your social life, I think that's when there's a problem, right? So if you're able to go for things, the functions that you need to go to, and if you're able to deal with people in a team, there's nothing wrong in wanting to be alone at times. I think all of us have this side to us, right? And is there a problem of being a perfectionist? Well, there is. See, the only problem of being a perfectionist is that you end up doing things very slowly because you want everything to be 100% perfect before you take the first step, right? And mostly you understand that things are not 100% perfect only after you take the first step, right? So being a perfectionist, I won't say is a problem, but you're going to be seeing results very slowly and you may never be satisfied. That's a big problem. On the other hand, striving towards perfection, I think that's the way to go, because at the end of it, you're not going to be settling for something which is mediocre. You're going to be looking at what is better, on and on. And always you keep understanding, okay, progress is important. I hope that answered your question. And we have one more, right? How to identify our inner strength as an individual. Okay. Every coin has two sides. I look at it this way always. Okay. So if every coin has two sides, whatever you feel as your weakness could be your strength as well, right? If you start developing that, that could be your strength as well, right? So there's nothing called strength or weakness. I'm not going to be talking about that aspect. I think the most important thing is that you see what you can use for which situation, right? Everything can be seen as a strength or a weakness. It totally depends on who you are and what you want it to be used for, correct? So I think that's about it. So how to identify the inner strength? You write down all your qualities, like I said, both positive and negative, and see where you need to modify a certain thing, right? Then you'll start, and you can start empowering the inner strength from yourself.
Keerthana,
Yes.
see, this is respect to the previous question, taking
Okay.
feedback and getting feedback, where you are saying that it's depending upon the perception, how the person really give the feedback, right?
Which question is this?
No, it was like earlier question which he answered
Okay.
with respect to taking and getting feedback, where you were saying that it depends upon the perception of the person who
Yeah.
is giving
Yeah.
the feedback. So our earlier session was like self-limiting beliefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
here, I shall I consider that let us limit the external sources feedback by getting into ourselves, self-limiting the external sources feedback since it's their perception.
Um, okay, so if we end up limiting, what happens to us, I mean, if we end up limiting the external feedback source, what
Correct.
happens to us is that we end up being very closed minded.
Okay.
Okay, so what happens to us is that anyone giving any feedback, we're not going to be listening to them at all. So we end up being very stubborn on what we are doing, even if it's wrong, right? So instead of doing that, see who all actually matters, and
Okay.
see, there's nothing wrong in evaluating a certain feedback given by anyone for that matter. You never know where that feedback is going to come and help you in which way, right? But also is very important for you to evaluate that particular feedback. Is it really important for me? Just evaluate that, and that is the most important point. Need not limit yourself from other people and anything. It's just about you evaluating whether the feedback is applicable to you or not. I think that's the most important.
Thank you so much. I voluntarily asked this question
Yeah.
because whenever we understand that it is their perception, since that is the reason they're giving a feedback in such a way, we
Mm-hmm.
stop limiting ourselves, rather than taking the feedback or not listening to them, so
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we are automatically ended up with our own perception.
Correct, correct.
Actually, we
Yes,
need to listen to each and every one perception and
exactly.
evaluate, and then
Yes,
finally come to a realization of which is really good and which is really
exactly.
needed, and then take it over, right?
Exactly, exactly that.
Thank you
Because
so
if we limit too much, then we are going to be very close-minded. That is not going to help us in any way.
much. And another one question adding up probably.
Yes, sure,
See,
sure.
when you said that we need to accept the change,
Mm-hmm.
see how for many people, many individuals would
Yeah.
have the willingness to accept the change, probably when they speak certain things,
Mm-hmm.
but when it coming to behavior or habit or an
Yes.
attitude, it is really a tough thing really to
Very tough.
process. So
Yes.
how do a person really overcome this kind of situation?
So, see, the thing is, it's when you start looking at the consequences of the change and consequences of your behavior to that particular change. Let me take the example of the lockdown, because that's something all of us are going through, and it's something all of us can relate to, right? So let's take this lockdown example and how a lot of companies have resisted that most important change that the company could have gone through by not doing anything, by being in denial for a long time. Correct?
Okay.
So imagine they had thought through the entire situation that, okay, let me, this entire lockdown is going to make everyone work from home. So let's start working on our processes or whatever it is. Then what would have happened that it might have transformed the company in a completely positive way, right? So it's all about looking at those consequences that we say thinking it through. So this is what it means. You just think through the consequences, what all can happen if we react to it positively. One activity that I give people is that write down consequence A, consequence B for a particular situation, right? So let's say a situation is going on and you respond in a particular way. Let's say you have 4 5 ways of responding. So you have A, B, C, and D. For all those responses that you can have, it can include a negative response also, obviously, because all of us are human beings bound to respond negatively, right? Also write down the consequences of that particular response, and the moment you write down the consequence of that particular response, what happens to us is that we get glued to the consequence. We want the positive consequence, thereby we start behaving a certain way. I hope this answered the question.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really good.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
many of us doesn't realize what the
yeah,
situation is going to teach us. Rather than that,
exactly.
we always wish that why the situation is not happening as per
Yeah,
our
exactly. Exactly that. Exactly that. Exactly that. I think there's one more question here. What are the
yeah.
simple ways to follow on a daily basis to keep our mental ability always positive without any negative influence? Now, that's going to be very, very tough. Your first step negative influence is something which is going to happen to all of us day in and day out. I'm telling you, even I feel low a lot of times. But the whole thing is, are we getting out of it as soon as possible? Are we acknowledging that, hey, this is making me feel negative, and are we coming out of it? That's very important, right? So, the simplest step to do this is for you to be aware. That's the simplest step, because the moment see, தெரிஞ்சே ஏதாவது பண்ணுவோமா? Do we do anything, you know, if something makes us feel bad, will we do it on purpose? Not really, right? So the whole thing is, when you start being aware of the emotions, this awareness bit, I'm going to keep bringing it up over and over again because that's so important. That's literally the basic step, right? So on an everyday basis, if you can note what makes you feel in what manner, what makes you emote a certain manner, I think that's your that's your breakthrough. That's your breakthrough point. That will make you jump out of your negative situation very easily, I'm telling you that. So this awareness bit, if you can start working on that, wherein you do things, you immediately understand, okay, this is how I'm feeling, this is my emotion right now, that could be something that changes you completely.
Kirtana, another one question, maybe the
Yes,
final
sure,
question.
sure, sure, sure.
When it is coming to mental immunity,
Yeah.
as like as a physical immunity, we need to practice certain tips and tricks to really keep our physically fitness.
Yes.
So, what are the certain tips and tricks that you're going to give us to keep our mental really fit to any particular situation? I'm speaking here to fit, not like strengthening the basic fundamental fitness, which
Yeah.
I need to be get prepared on my mind.
Okay. So the way, okay, two things is important. One is to uh, find the balance. Finding that balance is important. Too much negativity, too much positivity, again, that's going to create a huge difference. So importance is that balance. The second thing is your awareness. Awareness, again, that is the most fundamental thing, be it physical or mental. If you know, see, physically also, let's say if you have a pain in the neck, only if you're aware that when you're sitting like this you have a pain here, you're going to even go to a doctor, right? So the most important factor, even in terms of mental health, is that awareness that you are feeling this way or this is making you feel a certain way. Okay. So I think that's the most important part, the awareness bit. And the moment you start, again, like I said, the moment you start being mindful of such things, you are in a good position.
Thank you, Kirtana. Thank you so much
Thank you.
patiently
Thank you.
for giving answers for all the questions. And
Sure.
Kavita, over to you. You have to unmute yourself, Kavita.
As you said, always mute, mute. I have kept it on mute.
That is really good.
Yeah, okay. Done. So that was a wonderful section. Thank you so much. Today I could see like many questions coming from, and I think this is one of the favorite section for Prakash also. Yes, many good question coming up. Thank you so much, and hope everyone have some good like takeaway from this section. We will meet at the same time next week Saturday, and hope everyone will have a great weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much, Kirtana.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.